How an electrical impulse is generated in neurons. Every neuron has a membrane with the so-called gates, ion channels. When a signal needs to be transmitted, some of these gates open, and ions begin moving quickly into or out of the cell. This flow of ions changes the membrane's electrical charge, creating an electrical impulse. The impulse travels along the neuron and transmits information further to other cells. How you communicate, whether you interrupt, speak quickly and emotionally, or on the contrary, whether you're apathetic. How you scroll through a news feed on your phone, whether you rush or move slowly, depends largely on the balance of ions. When this balance is disrupted, a person can become overly irritable, or, on the contrary, sluggish. Every movement and reaction of our body is based on electrical impulses in neurons and other cells. For example, if you accidentally touch a hot object, nerve fibers instantly transmit a signal to the brain, which commands the muscles. Pull your hand away. Without electrical impulses, the body wouldn't be able to maintain a stable internal state, homeostasis. Even the immune system cannot function without electrical impulses. The speed and strength of every immune cell's response depend directly on the quality of impulse transmission. Emotions and thoughts are also the language of electrical impulses. When you feel joy, sadness, excitement, love, or recall a memory, tiny electrical sparks run between neurons. They're like messages between friends. One neuron writes, another reads, and passes it on. Through these chains, thoughts, emotions, and decisions are born. When you learn something new, that too is the work of electrical impulses. They create new neural connections, as if paving little pathways in the brain that make it easier for impulses to travel later on. Even at the very beginning of life, when a sperm cell fertilizes an egg, an extraordinary phenomenon occurs. This contact triggers a cascade of biochemical reactions, including the release of billions of zinc ions. This impulse acts like a start button that activates the egg and initiates the very process from which the future embryo begins to develop.
We rarely think of ourselves as electrical systems, yet that's exactly how our bodies function. Nature created a perfect design in which countless vital processes and interactions occur through electrical impulses. But there was one thing that nature could not have foreseen: that humans would create an enemy capable of infiltrating and disrupting this perfect mechanism. In studying micro and nanoplastics, we discovered that their most dangerous weapon is invisible. It is the electrostatic charge that these particles accumulate and retain. This charge begins to destroy us from within, starting from the very foundation of life, the cell. Inside the cell, charged nanoplastics cause the greatest harm. They disrupt communications between the cells, trigger self-destruction programs, and deprive cells of their ability to generate energy for sustaining life. The question is, how do plastics do this?
How do micro and nanoplastics damage the body's cells? Disruption of interactions between neurons. Electrostatic charge and extremely small size allow nanoplastic particles to penetrate inside human cells. The impact of nanoplastics on cell function can be clearly traced in neurons, cells of the nervous system, as their function is directly linked to the generation and transmission of electrical signals. Valérie Etkin, Doctor of Physical and Mathematical Sciences and member of the European Academy of Natural Sciences, emphasizes that the impact of nanoplastics on nerve cells manifests at the most fundamental levels.
Nanoplastics significantly influence the generation and transmission of neural impulses through multiple mechanisms that disrupt ion transport and the electrical activity of neurons responsible for transmitting nerve signals in the body.
Each neuron functions like a miniature battery. It constantly maintains a difference in electrical charge between the inside and outside of its membrane. This enables the neuron to be ready to transmit a signal at the right moment. charged nanoplastic disturbs this delicate balance, making the cell behave unpredictably. A neuron may activate prematurely, like a light flickering on without command, or conversely, fail to transmit a signal when needed. Such interference disrupts the operation of entire neural networks, like a city experiencing power outages, where neighborhoods go dark one after another, leading to a blackout. In addition, as shown by research conducted by Chinese scientists from Southern Medical University in Guangzhou, nanoplastic interferes with the operation of ion channels. Nanoplastic carrying an electrostatic charge can interact with these channels and alter their structure. As a result, the gates may fail to open or remain open for too long. This also disturbs normal signal transmission throughout the nervous system.
When electrostatic interactions occur with charged membrane lipids, they cause a redistribution of charged lipids and proteins within the membrane, which leads to impaired functionality of these lipid membranes. This results in localized changes in ion concentration and the formation of ion concentration gradients around charged particles. The function of ion pumps, which are essential for maintaining ion balance, becomes disrupted. Ion pumps are mechanisms that move substances against their concentration gradients, a process known as active transport. When these processes become unbalanced, they accumulate energy that can later be used by biological systems to perform work. And so, the work of these pumps may be disrupted, yet it's one of the core mechanisms underlying biological activity.
Signal transmission between neurons is a complex yet remarkably coordinated electrochemical communication process in which special molecules, neurotransmitters, play a crucial role. These molecules act as couriers, transferring information from one neuron to another in a strictly ordered manner. Nanoplastic particles carrying an electrostatic charge can interfere with the release of neurotransmitters or trigger their discharge without proper signaling. As a result, chaotic and false signals emerge in the brain, as if the nervous system can no longer distinguish what messages to send, when to send them, or where they should go.
Any disruption in communication between neurons inevitably affects our mental state. If you find yourself becoming forgetful or absent-minded, if you have difficulty concentrating or remembering even simple things, it may be a sign that the degradation of neural connections has already begun. Nanoplastics not only interfere with communications between neurons, but they also penetrate directly into cells and even trigger their self-destruction.
Cells start the process of self-destruction. Each cell continuously produces specific molecules known as reactive oxygen species. These molecules participate in processes of growth, division, and programmed cell death. Under normal conditions, their levels are regulated by the cell's defense system, antioxidants, acting as cleaners. Antioxidants rapidly neutralize excess reactive oxygen species, preventing them from damaging the organism. When a cell is exposed to irritants, such as infection, injury, or toxins, it produces elevated levels of reactive oxygen species, which in excess can damage vital cellular structures. This leads to oxidative stress, a kind of chemical assault within the cell. In response to damage and oxidative stress, a natural defense mechanism is activated: inflammation. Its purpose is to eliminate the source of injury and restore balance. However, in the case of electrostatically charged nanoplastic, this mechanism ceases to function properly. Plastic particles remain inside the cell and act as a continuous irritant. The inflammation does not subside and becomes chronic. As a result, DNA, proteins, membranes, and other key cellular structures are damaged. Ultimately, the cell either can no longer function properly or initiates its own self-destruction.
We've done remarkable studies and discovered that plastic embeds itself inside the cytoplasm. The cytoplasm contains organelles, small structures that keep the cell alive and functioning. Plastic gets into the cytoplasm and stays there. It becomes surrounded by a membrane. Similar to the cell membrane, the cell isolates it because it wants to destroy it. And it starts producing enzymes and other substances the cell normally uses when it's invaded by microbes, viruses, bacteria, or antigens. But unlike those natural invaders, plastic is indestructible, as we said. So the cell is essentially subjected to chronic stress, and eventually it becomes diseased.
The Microplastics Research Group at the Bolivian Catholic University in Cochabamba uses aquatic planarians, small organisms that serve as highly useful biological models. Their strong regenerative capacity makes it possible to detect early changes in cellular processes similar to those that occur in other animals. Microplastics, especially when combined with other pollutants such as metals, are already affecting living organisms. Microplastics can trigger oxidative stress, an imbalance between the production of reactive oxygen species and the body's antioxidant capacity. This oxidative stress directly affects cellular metabolism, disrupting the functions of proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids, which can lead to changes in growth, regeneration, and the overall physiology of organisms.
Thus, exposure to electrostatically charged nanoplastic leads to oxidative stress, inflammation, and consequently, the death of not only neurons, but also other types of cells.
Oxidative stress is like a fire burning inside a cell, while antioxidants are like firefighters that work to extinguish it. Note that nanoplastics act as a fuel for the fire, feeding it endlessly until the cell is consumed from within. Yet, that's not all nanoplastics do inside our cells. They also destroy the cell's power plants, the mitochondria. Every cell lives and functions thanks to the energy produced by mitochondria. That very energy powers all processes in the body, from cell division to hormone synthesis. Even the electrical impulses that we've been talking about depend on the energy from mitochondria. And it is precisely this vital source of life that charged nanoplastics attack.